Hi, I'm Heather Meeker. I'm talking to you today from Scotts Valley, California. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person in Brussels, but the logistics wouldn't allow it. Please have an excellent beer for me while you're there. I'm going to talk to you today about open source software businesses. And just to say a little bit about me to begin with, I'm a lawyer and a venture capitalist, and I've been working in Silicon Valley for about 30 years. And my topic for today is open source, the Costco of software investments. I want to start by telling you a joke about Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Trigger warning, because this joke has a dark side. But I didn't make it up. It's well known in business circles. Most of you probably know this, but Mr. Buffett and Mr. Munger were the principals of Berkshire Hathaway, probably one of the most well-respected investment companies on the planet. They're well known for being geniuses of business. Here's the joke. Dangerous killers kidnap Buffett and Munger. They first point a gun at Munger, and they say, "Do you have any last words?" And Charlie says, "I would like for one last time to give my speech about how much I love Costco." And then they turn to Warren and they say, "Do you have any last words?" And he says, "Kill me first." Now, I trust you've all heard of Costco, but in case you haven't, it's a discount warehouse store based in the US. But it's also a fascinating business that breaks all the rules and yet is incredibly successful. When Munger died last year, he owned over $100 million in Costco stock and was on its board of directors. In early 2023, Munger said, "I love everything about Costco. I'm a total addict, and I'm never going to sell a share." He also called it a perfect business. I'm going to tell you a few key points about Costco as a business. Costco's average per location revenue is almost 3 times its competitors. Same-store revenue is a key metric in retail. Costco's average gross margin was only about 12% in 2022. Its competitors range from 20% and up. Costco has been more consistently successful in global markets than its competitors. And Costco's membership is amazingly loyal. Its annual renewal level is over 90%. Costco also limits the markup on its products to a maximum of 14%, but it also does not sell products at a loss except for its famous hot dog meal. In other words, it does not make up for loss leader products by raising the price of other products. It just sells everything at a fair price. It's an incredible business model. But it's not what you would call a unicorn. It's not a hockey stick. But look at this growth, up an average of 10% per year, year after year for decades. That is an investment almost anyone would make. Okay, so thanks for indulging me. I hope you're not feeling like Warren Buffett in the joke now. I want to explain what this has to do with commercial open source businesses. And by the way, in this talk, I'll refer to businesses that are built around open source software as commercial open source software, or COSS. I hope that doesn't get too confusing between COSS and Costco. Costco has been accused by stock analysts of being a charity run for the benefit of its customers. COSS businesses have also been accused of running their businesses as charities for the benefit of their community. And lots of people refuse to believe that you can make money with COSS. They look at it like the underpants gnomes. Step 1, collect underpants. Step 3, profit, but they don't know what is step 2. To successfully run a COSS business, you need to understand step 2. I've written and spoken a lot about that strategy, including in my book, From Project to Profit. But today I want to focus on why it works rather than how it works. Because as a business community, we have got a lot of education to do. Those of us who work on costs as a business strategy are regularly told that our life's work is a fairy tale. Well, that's wrong. Just like the analysts were wrong about Costco. And there are plenty of businesses like Red Hat and GitHub to prove it. In fact, I've been doing some analysis recently, and while I'm still researching, I think the cost sector is now a huge percentage of the software sector, somewhere between 10 and 20%, and growing. One similarity between costs and the Costco model is pricing strategy. If you're a Costco shopper, you have certainly experienced the effects of this pricing strategy. The fact that Costco applies a relatively consistent and reasonable markup to its products has a profound effect on consumer alignment. When I see something at Costco that I need, I don't bother checking prices elsewhere. I just buy it. I know the quality will be good, the price will be fair, and probably lower than I can get it elsewhere. Even if it isn't absolutely the lowest price available, the difference will not be significant and the quality will be good. So I just buy it. I don't bother comparison shopping. That is the power of the Costco brand. Cost businesses are like that too. The openness of licensing exerts a similar pricing pressure that drives businesses to a reasonable but sustainable margin. How does this work? The open source license means that anyone could use the software to make a product if they wanted to. But the company that does this with the most consistent and fair pricing and the best quality wins in the marketplace. Now let's talk about growth. Lots of investors seem to want to invest in the hockey stick companies. These are companies like Uber or WeWork, which have spectacular rises in valuation so investors can get their money out quick. And that's good work if you can get it, don't get me wrong. But for every venture-backed company that experiences hockey stick growth, there are 10 or maybe 100 that just fail. These companies usually raise lots of capital to engage in what's called blitz scaling, growing as quickly as possible to fill a new market by pricing below cost, like Uber, in a strategy called customer acquisition, or leverage buying of assets like WeWork. And if you have followed the news, you know that this kind of strategy is both capital intensive and extremely risky. Costco never did this. In fact, it hardly took any outside money at all, despite a long and sustained growth trajectory. It focused on funding its business out of revenue with a slower path of growth. Cost companies are usually more this profile than that of a hockey stick. They rarely do much advertising because their sales are fueled by community interest. They rarely hire big development teams, at least in their early stages. They don't just throw bodies at tasks. They often have no physical office, look for developers worldwide where they are least expensive, and their community is more patient with slower releases and fewer feature additions than might be achieved with big injections of capital. In a tech world where everyone is looking for the next Uber, maybe a slow and steady investment, which is economical with capital and expenses, may seem old-fashioned or unambitious, but maybe the software business could use a little more of that these days. In fact, one of the benefits of software as a business model is low costs and high margins. Yet somehow that morphed into a sector that is famous for blitz scaling and spending billions of dollars training Gen AI. I think it's interesting at this point to go back to the roots of the software business. Cost businesses take advantage of the inherent benefits of software as a business proposition. When I was starting my career doing M&A work in Silicon Valley, the average software business making an exit or taking an investment had a bunch of computer servers and lots of employees. Today, they usually own no equipment, AWS made that possible, and often run with a skeleton team. That's the power of the tech business today. You can outsource almost anything, HR, compliance, CMS, CRM, ERP, and so forth, and scale it quickly for your needs. So why not do that and start businesses with minimal capital? That allows for a more gentle growth curve with less outside investment. For you founders out there, I'm going to tell you something that may seem against my own interests. Don't raise more capital than you have to. Be economical with your costs. If you can bootstrap, do it. Now, there are certain businesses or phases of business, particularly in B2C, where you need to grow quickly to gain a market advantage. For that, you might need extra capital from outside investors. But fast growth is not identical to success. That's like saying GitHub stars or downloads is success. Those are good indicators, but success is about building a business with a great brand and sustainable growth that your community can rely on, not to mention that all-important step 2, actually making profits. Costco is a discount seller, and theoretically any retailer could sell the same products at the same prices. But competitors like Walmart have tried to duplicate Costco's model and failed. Why? It has to do with brand loyalty and consistency. That difference, brand loyalty and credibility, is actually why Costco succeeds, not its products. Quality is also exactly what cost businesses sell. The most important assets of a cost business are its brand and its people. The brand is about quality and the people are about execution. The open source software is, in a way, well, kind of irrelevant. This may seem counterintuitive, but there is a difference between source code and a product. Here's another little meme joke to bring this point across. Recently, Linux celebrated its 30th birthday, and one of my friends on Facebook reposted this meme. Let's think about a car. Suppose you want a car that costs $30,000, but I would give you all the parts of the car for free. The catch is you have to assemble it yourself. That's a 100% discount. Would you take it? No way. Why not? Because the car might not work, or it might not be street legal if you're not an authorized manufacturer. And it would take you a lot of your personal time to assemble it, and you couldn't get it serviced anywhere either. That's how cost works as well. Releasing open source code is like giving away the bill of materials to everyone, including your competitors and customers. But can everyone make the car? No. Cost businesses compete based on their reputation and consistency. Now, let's talk about the Costco markup. Costco sets a reasonable return on its sales, and it doesn't go above or below a fairly narrow band. Similarly, cost businesses usually sell at very reasonable prices. They're not selling the software. They're selling services and upsell items. They're selling reliability. They're selling peace of mind to CTOs. This in turn places price pressure on proprietary competitors so that products for which there is an open source alternative tend to be very reasonably priced indeed. This is illustrated in this slide. Now, this slide focuses on application software because that sector tends to publish its pricing. Lots of cost is actually in the infrastructure area where pricing is more complex, and I'm sorry I could not easily find comparisons there. As you can see, the costs and proprietary products have very similar pricing. And if that's right, where are all these royalties for the IP? If you go to most business analysts, or worse, IP lawyers, they will tell you that you need to protect your IP because it is very valuable. But actually, what is valuable about your business is your ability to execute and solve problems for your customers. IP is about creating barriers to entry, but all the barriers in the world will not make your product any good. Your product is about your brand, and that's a kind of IP because it involves your trademark. Your trademark or brand stands for your reputation. That you need to protect. But the idea that your fledgling software company is monetizing IP like patents, trade secrets, or copyrights is actually pretty misleading. As I mentioned, Costco does not do loss leaders. Many people think cost is a loss leader model, but I don't think that is the right way to look at it. I think the community and enterprise editions of cost products are two separate but complementary products. There's a lot more about that in my book, From Project to Profit, if you want to get it down into the weeds, so I'll only cover the basics on this. Many cost businesses have an enterprise version and a community version. The community version is under an open source license and is free of charge. The enterprise version has extra bells and whistles, software features, hosted or managed services, early access to features, maintenance and support, and so on. Most people think that the community version is a substitute for the enterprise version, or they think that the community version is, say, a proxy for an evaluation version, and the objective is to convert community members to customers. But that's a slight misunderstanding. Of course, some community members become customers. But to run a successful cost business, you can't think about your community product as cannibalizing your enterprise product or simply being an evaluation version you need to convert to a real sale. Viewing community and enterprise versions as competitive with each other leads to failure of cost business models. When you think about it that way, the community and enterprise versions are substitutes for each other. In economic terms, a substitute means that when the price of one goes up, the sale of the other goes up. That's called positive cross-elasticity of demand. Think of bolts and screws. If bolts and screws are the same price, you might buy either, but if the price of bolts go up, you might buy the screws instead. You can see this on the demand curve on this slide. With costs, the price of the community version is zero. So if they are substitutes, it will be hard to sustain a market for the enterprise version. The better way to think of the community product is actually a complement for an enterprise version. Complementary goods have negative cross-elasticity of demand. Let's think about nuts and bolts. If the price of nuts goes up, the demands for bolts will go down. That's because a consumer usually uses them together. With costs, if the price of the enterprise version goes up, you may see some adopters moving to the community version, but most will move to another product entirely because the two versions work together. Most enterprise customers will have used the community version, and some will still use the community version once they adopt the enterprise version. If you think about the two versions in this way, you can see that they can work together, not against each other. So in sum, cost is not a loss leader model. This is like Costco selling both nuts and bolts at a fair price, or more likely, beach umbrellas and drink coolers. One will drive sales of the other. One of the most significant expenses in any business is marketing. Costco does virtually no marketing. It doesn't put ads on TV or Facebook or in news media. Its popularity is almost entirely word of mouth, yet Costco has 71 million members. That's bigger than the population of many countries. Costco relies on word of mouth to grow its member base. This is very similar to a cost business. Cost businesses, to some extent, sell themselves. The traditional wisdom is that cost products enter an organization through its developers, not through its procurement department. This means that ordinary marketing doesn't work, or at least is not critical to building a sales pipeline. Instead of thinking of the community version as competitive good that cannibalizes your enterprise customer base, you should think of it as an investment in branding and marketing of your company. Your community of cost users generates brand loyalty and goodwill for your company, which in turn generates enterprise sales. Think about a product like Gucci or Rolex. They have stores in shopping malls where they never seem to actually sell anything. But those stores might still make business sense. Think of your community edition like a showroom, the part of your business that welcomes people in and helps them get excited about what you are doing. Keeping this in mind, does your online repo look like this? Or like this? I've obscured the name of this company because I'm not trying to pick on any specific company, but it's not much of a showcase, is it? You get the idea. Your open source repository may be the most important way that you interact with the world. Make sure it is ultra professional, interesting, and welcoming. That means good documentation, graphics, README, contributing, a code of conduct, everything that a top-tier product would have. You can create this cheaply and easily without the need for expensive marketing. Costco's private label is the Kirkland brand. Kirkland is actually one of the top-selling brands in the entire world, though it's not a fair comparison given it crosses so many sectors. If you're a Costco member, you probably know one or two items with the Kirkland brand that you like more than any of the major brands. And actually, many Kirkland brands are made by the exact same manufacturers of the major brands. They're essentially the same product in a different package. But amazingly, Kirkland has a more solid reputation than a lot of the major brands. In a way, cost companies are essentially store brands. Anyone can sell a product built around the open source code, but the cost company that wins in the marketplace is the one that creates the most value. Think about Red Hat. Anyone can build a Linux distro, but lots of customers buy Red Hat. It's basically an ultra successful house brand. Even though Costco stores are huge, they actually have a limited selection of about 3,800 items. Competitive retailers and even supermarkets usually stock upwards of 7,000. But what Costco sacrifices in variety, it makes up in quality. So while a competing retailer might give you a choice of 2 or 3 brands with different mixes of price and quality, Costco gives you one. The implied message is, this is the best value. If you want to buy a product like this, here is the best deal that we found for you. Cost works like this as well. Proprietary software companies are infamous for adding tons of features and making multiple additions. The result is the products are hard to use and the pricing and additions are confusing. One of Costco's big strengths is its international success. Most of its competitors have tried to expand internationally and failed. The reason Costco has been successful where others have failed is that it tends to proceed more cautiously, making sure that its practices are going to fit with local requirements and tastes. Cost also works in this way because expanding software into an international market does not require much infrastructure. The goal is easier to begin with, but cost tends to localize itself. The truth about community contributions to open source projects is that most of them are very small. Even for classic community projects that are not backed by a private company, most contributions are minor. Identification of issues, bug fixes, documentation changes, configuration changes, and the like. It's actually pretty rare for contributions to include significant code. But one of the most successful areas for engaging contributors is localization. One thing users really love about open source is the ability to translate it into their local language and practices. And this is something best left to local users rather than a company that doesn't have the resources to figure out local needs. But the two are similar in that they proceed slowly and organically. This type of growth is highly sustainable and less risky than traditional notions of capital-intensive international expansion. One last comment about the similarities between Costco and Koss. Costco is famous for being a business run on principles. Costco has a written code of ethics, and it goes like this: obey the law, take care of our members, take care of our employees, and respect our suppliers. These are not just words. Costco actually lives this ethic. In return, it has engendered passionate loyalty among its customers and its employees. It pays its employees well and has low turnover and low costs of labor. The current CEO started as a part-time shelf stocker and has been with the company for 55 years. A well-run cost business follows these principles as well. Open source licenses require developers to respect the rights of their customers. Treating your developers and contributors with respect is also a key to running a great cost business. The CEO of one of my investments recently told me that they had an internal SLA for responding on GitHub and Discord, showing that they take their community seriously. If you take care of your community, they will take care of you too. Costco's stability of management mirrors some of the most successful cost companies, whose founders tend to stick around for decades, like the founders of WordPress.com, GitLab, and Red Hat. This kind of continuity is possible because the pattern of steady, consistent growth does not require the kinds of financial deals that inject capital but tend to result in upheavals in management. You really can do well by doing right. There are a couple of areas where cost businesses are not like Costco, and I want to talk about those too. You can see that the first item on the Costco written ethics code is obey the law. Lots of software businesses, not just cost businesses, skip that step. Silicon Valley in particular is known for the motto of run fast and break things. It's easy to understand and maybe even sympathize. The software business used to be mostly unregulated, and that's arguably one reason it thrived. But as tech has become more and more mainstream, regulation has been advancing. Many small startups just don't have the resources to obey the law, particularly as the law gets more and more complicated. For example, the EU Privacy Directive, GDPR, it's an open secret that most startups don't even bother trying to comply with it until they have a round or two of funding. In practice, it's rarely enforced against small companies. But that doesn't mean a company should disregard the law. It's a tough decision for a small company to decide how much they can afford to spend on compliance, and the costs of compliance keep growing every single year. Lately, the EU's CRA has imposed significant liability on cost companies. After much controversy, it contains some exemptions for open source, but not for commercial open source. Startup companies need to strategize carefully about how much to comply and when. Good legal counsel can help you understand how to triage your compliance risk and spend your resources where they matter most. Another way Costco sets itself apart is by paying top wages even to its entry-level workers. Even beginning workers get good pay and good benefits, not to mention the chance for advancement. Remember about the CEO starting as a shelf stocker. This results in very low turnover and in turn saves money. Cost businesses may tend to pay better than most businesses because they tend to run lean, meaning every team member is a key member. But even cost businesses should hire the right team, not the cheapest team. Turnover is costly for any business. That's easy to say, though, because at the early stages of a business, every dollar counts. Also, it can be maddening to wait to find the right team. It seems like no matter what people are saying about the job market, the right people are always hard to find. Like any startup, a cost business should give its employees skin in the game in the form of equity or ownership. Costco has also performed well through good times and bad. During difficult times, people like to save money. During good times, they turn to quality. Cost businesses also succeed during bad times. Lots of businesses first turned to open source during the dot-com bust in 2001 and then just never went back. It turned out that saving money was great, but the robustness and quality of open source kept these adopters in the open source world. A few years ago, I wrote an article about this in which I did a study of when successful open core projects started. Most of them started during recessionary times. I proposed a few reasons for that. The main reason, I think, is that cost founders tend to start their projects when their employment is uncertain or when they're actually unemployed. So open core is actually a great counter-cyclical investment. And by the way, I'm looking forward to what's coming up in the next few years. What do you think? Have I convinced you that cost is a good business model for healthy, consistent returns and strong businesses? I hope so. And I also hope that when you talk to others in the business community, you can pass along this message. We need to deflect the superficial generalization that open source development is a charity and not a business. Meanwhile, we know something the analysts don't know. Investing in costs is a great idea. Let's all prosper from this knowledge. Thanks for listening. I'm now going to be available for live Q&A.